Hello, everybody. I am Marina Bluvshtein, and it is my honor and privilege to talk to you today. I know this is the last of the 10 exciting sessions that most of you, I hope all of you, were able to listen to participate, to get excited, to get motivated, to start dreaming of seeing everybody and each other and all of us in person is motivation. So in the next about 30 minutes, we will talk about what is human motivation, what is the role of motivation in individual development and social evolution, what is the current challenge to humankind to stay motivated, how to stay motivated and motivating, what is the meaning of creativity and solitude in motivation, motivation and cooperation, motivation and full devotion. Well, listen, I'm a firstborn. Look at this list. I'm making the list, and I'm absolutely determined to make it happen. So we cross all the T's and we put all the check marks, and we'll talk about all these things. We will also do a little demonstration today. We'll see how it's going to go. Well, the word motivation been used so much and for such a long time that it kind of started using a little bit of a value. We're not thinking about that much. So what I've started doing is that I went to the origin of the words, and I thought, okay, let's see what this whole thing was all about and where the word is came from. So you see two words here. Is it a motivation and motive, which is a root of the word motivation. And the motivation, and that was like absolutely astonishing when I just opened. I didn't expect much. I thought, okay, well, let's see what Webster or any other dictionaries will give me. And then I thought, oh my God, this is completely an Adlerian word, just by origin, not just because we decided so, because we want everything to be Adlerian. So the motivation is a reason or reasons one has to act and behave in a particular way. Okay, well, that's kind of known. It's a general desire or willingness of someone to do something. Well, we sort of know that. Now, start looking at the roots of that and think of the words that do have motive as a part of these words. Think of motion pictures. Think of motion. Thinks of locomotive. Are you with me? Motivation is about movement. It is completely about movement. It's not about anything else. It's just all about movement. It's a movement from one point to another point, and everything that it takes for a person and a community and a society to get into the motion to produce physical and emotional motion. And if we are talking about a cause, this is that very final cause, this ultimate point, this ultimate destination of the word motive. That is a motive with an F at the end. And motive as a unifying, unique element in artistic work. It's stable. It's unique, and it's unifying. It's a theme, and it's a pattern. Leitmotif, we know that word from music, from composition, in art and literature and music. If you see the second meaning of the right side of your screen now. Now, what do you think I was thinking about when I saw that? Of course, this is lifestyle. This is this unique, stable theme, a pattern, the one that is woven into everything that we do, all the movement, every action, every thought, every emotion. Now, how could somebody say that motivation is not an Adlerian word? Of course it is. Now, what do we do about that? What's our task? how we go about that, how we find our own motivation, how we use it in our day-to-day life, and how do we align our own private motivations with the general desire of humanity to come together, to feel oneness, to survive calamities, to see with the eyes of another, to hear with the ears of another, and to feel with the heart of another in a way that would not be a stuckness, that would not be sabotage, that would produce motion, movement to a greater oneness of humanity. Now, when we talk about motivation as being a reason or causes for one's movement, we really need to make some clarification here, because behaviorists also talk about reasons and causes, and they emphasize these reasons and causes when they try to modify human behavior. What we see here and what we need to focus on is that as how individual psychology is different from behaviorism. Behaviorism emphasizes the past. Individual psychology of Alfred Adler emphasizes the future. There is no movement to the past, but there is a movement toward the future. So there is no discussion, or should be no discussion, about motivation without talking about movement, a future-oriented, a future-aimed movement, without talking about action. No wonder we say that somebody was moved by events. So there is really no talk about motivation without movement, emotions in the direction of this future. That's why when we talk to somebody about what's happening with them right now, we're always asking not the question what has happened before, but what is that right now? What does it mean to you? What have you decided to do next? What is your next courageous step? And even when we say why, and every time we say why, we really mean this future. We really mean not what pushed one to do something or to be somewhere or to experience certain feelings, but what pulls one in a direction of the future movement, and where this today's day, where does it belong in this movement toward the future? And that's a very, very important clarification, because motivation is that real future cause, a future reason. Again, not what pushes us or pushed us, but what pulls us in a direction of our unique particular future and a universal future of humanity and movement of humanity toward the goal of greater oneness, a goal of belongingness to humanity, to humankind. So every time we say why, we think future. And it is an absolutely important thing to remember. Now, what is human motivation? Rudolf Dreikurs wrote quite a bit about that. And one of his definition, and that's an opening sentence in his absolutely amazing paper, Why People Become Artists, just love this paper, is that the forces that guide the individual into a particular vocational interest. And so he's saying that these are really not easy to understand, but which is not, thanks God we are so complex as human natures. But what's interesting here is that look at the word guide and look at the word leading into a particular vocation or interest. And again, we see here a very, very strong future orientation. Another definition here is that interest is the decisive factor in the development of any activity, and encouragement is necessary to maintain it. So the underscores are not mine. These are Rudolf Dreikurs underscores, interest and encouragement. We'll talk about that a little later as well. So what he's emphasizing here is that the social nature of motivation, the fact that people live in social atmosphere, in a social environment, and then direct their actions towards social participation, integration, and acceptance, which means success and happiness. Failure and emotional and other disturbances result when this social integration is not accomplished, when belongingness does not happen, or when it does not happen on a useful side of life. When the child in his early life encounters obstacles which do not permit him to function within his group, as well as others do, he tries as hard as he can to make up for it. And this is where we do see a core of psychopathology, a core of disturbances, and that is a disturbed sense of belongingness. It's inability or very big, great difficulties in moving toward this sense of oneness with others. Lack of motivation being quoted a lot of times by those who cannot move, or those who are attempting to help the ones who are trying to move. So we see sometimes that, a lot of times probably, the motivation is very, very systemic. Because it's very systemic, because it's very social, we're always asking, where are the others? What is the destination? What is the feeling that the one is trying to feel, to get at the end of this motion? What are the emotions that are steering up one's movement, that are fueling one's movement? How it all works, and how is the motive of one's life, the theme of that life, the leitmotif of life, is playing a role in this whole process of creative movement, creative motion. How emotions, and again I'm quoting Rudolf Dreikurs here, are part of person's orchestration toward achieving that goal. So emotions are also came as a word from the motion, from the word movement, started being, the word started being active in a vocabulary in Old French in 16th century, and literally at that time it meant social moving. Isn't that wonderful? So what you see here is that a tri-spoke wheel of human motivation with knowledge, courage, and contribution. I was inspired to do so by reading Lydia Zicher's article, what is on human motivation, and the discussion of human motivation. And the article it's a 1954 article, Education for Freedom. What's interesting, she writes, that the three troublemakers that are bedeviling the world: ignorance, greed, and fear. She concludes then that to make the world a better place, to make humanity more the one, to strengthen this oneness of humanity, we really need to combat, to confront, to deal with these three troublemakers, as she wrote. And dealing with ignorance by knowledge, with fear by courage, and with greed by contribution. Interestingly enough, and then she wrote that education, the aim of education is really to confront these three problems: ignorance, greed, and fear. Interestingly enough, when we look at the knowledge, courage, and contribution, we might see those as nouns. As it's been my habit for quite a few years now, I'm trying to make every noun a verb. Knowledge is a verb. It's a process of becoming smarter, becoming wiser, of knowing the process of understanding the nature, the meaning of things. Courage is a process. It's a verb that is tied to knowledge, because courage is a knowledge that is residing in one's heart. And the contribution is really not a noun. It is really a verb. And these three spokes are the ones that are moving, motivating the person toward the greater good and the greater contributions. So the other things, the other characteristics of these spokes are they are very relational. Knowledge is relational. We are not knowing anything without knowing it in common with others. Courage is relational. There are no virtues and no need for virtues on a deserted island. And contributions are by default relational. Now, the destination where these wheels are going and taking us and pulling us is also very relational, and it's also very holistic. So knowledge, courage, and contributions are all three are how we are getting motivated, but they also a destination where we're moving while we're getting motivated. An amazing quote here by Dr. Eve Dreikurs Ferguson in her article, Adler's Motivational Theory. For Adler in the later years, the need to belong and bond with others as a fundamental human motivation became linked to the goal of contribution. And then she writes, in the later years, feeling oneness with one's fellow humans was linked to striving to contribute to human welfare. Now, if motivation is so important, then if it does not work or does not work well enough, we really need to talk about motivational modification. And this is what might seem sort of obvious, sort of common sense now, was not that common sense back in 1972 when Rudolf Dreikurs wrote in his Technology of Human Relations, really contrasting Adlerian psychology and behaviorism, saying that a behaviorist, Skinner in particular, speaks about a technology of behavior. That was pretty popular back then. While we speak about a technology of human relationships, Skinner attempts a behavioral modification, while we propose motivation modification. That was a task that Rudolf Dreikurs placed in front of us, not only psychologists, but educators, teachers, leaders in industries, and politicians. Motivational modification. No good comes from modifying the behavior. It never lasts longer. It never goes deep enough. It really never is encouraging. And clearly, it is rarely truly relational. So, what is motivation? Motivation modification. How to achieve it? In the same article, Dreikurs gives us an answer. His answer, a spirit of cooperation. What strikes me always, and I don't know if he meant that way, is that not just cooperation, but spirit of cooperation. Not just cooperation as doing, but cooperation of feeling. And it's all together in a very holistic manner. Feeling of cooperation, thinking of cooperation, and cooperation as an active verb. Cooperate, doing it. And that's a spirit of cooperation. We have enough evidence, he wrote, to know that this change of motivation, this new technology of human relationships, can free human from the present obstacles to personal development. so that when we can expect in the not too far distant future a type of human and of a society which will be far beyond anything we can visualize in our fondest dreams. Dreaming and visualizing are just so important things. Now, are we there yet? Are we still dreaming? We're probably not there yet. Do we want to get there? Well, I guess we cannot afford not to be going there. Well, it's interesting because even though we might felt that we were totally motivated back before the COVID-19 strike, maybe that was not really truly motivation. Maybe that was just going with the flow. Maybe that was a default movement. Maybe the actual motivation is not when we move with the flow, not when it is doing things by default, not when it's all pre-planned, pre-marked, pre-arranged for us. Maybe when we do all these things despite the obstacles. Maybe it is when we have to actually work to overcome, to really use the motivation as a muscle. Dreikurs wrote about that. Rebellion against pressure, born of solitude and savagery, is a reflections and love of beauty. It is a direct stimulation of the obstacles that might actually bring up a true motivation. Obstacles can be really motivating. Just think about that. And maybe you would welcome the obstacles as an opportunity to work through the motivation muscle, to learn how to be motivated and motivating. Loneliness, of course, is a threat to motivation. Beethoven is one of those examples. He became completely deaf by the time he composed his most amazing pieces. The Ode to Joy that I know many people listened to at the very beginning of COVID-19 isolation was composed when he was completely deaf. Although initially he felt an anxiety and worrying about whether or not he's missing any messages, anything from others around, and any cues and any signals and any signs. And even though occasionally he felt despair and he felt mistrust because he could not hear what was going on around him, he found the deeper meaning of that. And then he focused on what was going on within him, not outside of him. He was able to totally concentrate. He was able to free himself from the distraction. And he framed, as he wrote about that, the freedom from to freedom for. That was a sensory freedom, not to worry about the distractions, not to try to cut off whatever sounds could have distracted him from his composing. He was completely free. We can be completely free as well. Of course, and this is a much bigger talk, we're not going to talk much about that, Dostoevsky. It's a bigger talk because Adler wrote 6 articles about Dostoevsky. And this is another interesting example when a person who was deprived what he enjoyed before, he spent 8 months in complete solitude in prison, in jail, without even having access to writing or paper or pencils or any companionship. And then after that, a complete sensory deprivation changed into complete sensory overwhelm when he spent many, many, many months in a labor camp, not having any private moment, any quiet moment to his life. So what he was able to do is that he was able to turn his attention inward, doing journaling, doing reading. He was observing what was going on around, taking notes and phrases used by other prisoners. And only then, he found the motivation and will for life and developed a much greater, much truer compassion for others and an idea of much greater equality and oneness with humankind. So the true motivation comes from within and fueled by emotions. It is when it is consistent with our theme, our leitmotif, our aim. It is when it is informed by what's observed happening outside of self, because the others is important. It is when directed at others and for others. It is when directed at the future. It is when happening despite obstacles. And it is when motivation from within is aimed at what will happen without and is directing us to oneness between that within and without, us now and our ancestors, us now and those who come after us here and humanity. This is the meaning of belongingness, not only as a goal of movement, but how we can succeed in trying to get there. What we'll do now is that I have a guest here, and then we will invite our guest and see how the uniqueness of human motivation can really fuel our movement, and how we create this meaning, how we search for that meaning, and how we can change the meaning if whatever we have is not working for us. So with us today is Alexander Ramsay, who's a student at Adler University and who graciously agreed to help me in this little exercise. So how are you, Alexandra?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I will be good. So we're going to work on that, right? Okay. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, so we're in June of 2020, and I know you just finished your finals for your first year at the graduate school. So what would you say? How's your level of motivations? How's your motivation?
I would say I'm maybe a bit slightly less motivated than normal after a very chaotic semester. Coming down off of that.
It was pretty chaotic? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So may I ask you a couple of questions?
You may.
All right. Thank you. Well, you can say no, and then we will not do that altogether. Okay. So if motivation is pretty abstract term, right? So like when you say motivation and then you try to imagine that, and it's like, what is that? How is that? I mean, I went to dictionaries and I found the definitions, but then it's still pretty abstract. So if motivation, the way you think about that now, the way you feel about yourself with that now, if there was an object, if that was a thing, what would that be? Help me see it the way you might see it.
I think when I think of motivation as a thing, the first thing that comes to mind are my running shoes, my sneakers.
So your running shoes, your sneakers. Okay. Well, so this is an image in your mind's eyes, sort of, right? In your heart's eyes. So, I mean, help me see that the way you see that. What kind of sneakers they are? Do they have color? Are they worn off? Are they new? Are they big? Are they small? Are they sparkly? Are they not? I have no idea. So you just help me see what you see.
Yeah, so they are a really beautiful shade of blue. So every time I'm running and I look down, I get really excited because blue is my favorite color. They're more often than not caked in mud because I run in all conditions. I think there's a hole wearing through at the toe of one of them. I have a few hundred miles on them, so I should be getting a new pair, but I refuse to because I ran my first marathon in these shoes and they fit like a glove, and I never want them to stop traveling with me, if you will.
So you're quite a mover, right? You said a couple thousand miles. Goodness. Huh. So, yeah. Okay. Now, do they make any sound? I mean, are they anything else? Anything else on that image that may be a part of this whole picture that maybe you see now and you might be willing to share?
Yeah, sounds that come to mind. I run both on the street and also out in nature. So sometimes it's the sound of it hitting the pavement. Sometimes it's the sound of leaves and twigs snapping and rustling.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the noise that I hear, though, is my breathing, and I can feel my heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the birds, because I always run outside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's quite busy for you, right? Yeah. You watch it onto your, sneakers and you listen to. Is there anybody else out there? Anybody else is in that picture?
Yes, my dad has been my running buddy for the past 10 years. So when I think of running, I always think of him.
So it's you and a pair of sneakers and your dad and leaves and all these sounds. And they are, you said, blue and kind of well worn. And you hear all this sound. And then and with all these observations, you keep running, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you're becoming a therapist. What it sounds like. You're going to keep running while watching everything and hear all the sounds and watch all the. Okay, well that's good. So thank you. That's quite an experience. So and the sneakers they are on your feet, right? So I just want to the way you see that. Okay, good. So how did it get to be that way? What happened before? What was happening before?
Before running.
Before this very image that you have, like the sneakers and you, and then in your feet, and you're running and mud and sneakers, and your dad is there, and then so what was there before? What was happening before?
I think the thing that comes to mind before a run is maybe feeling a little bit of stress, wanting to like release some stress, wanting to feel strong, especially if we're sitting in a chair all day for class.
So while you were doing all these things and feeling stressed, you had the sneakers on you?
No, I think the lacing up, I'm usually barefoot if I can help it, but the lacing in my running shoes is like a mental shift for me. Like it's time to let go, or time to they're like a sign for me of like, let's go get a different type of work done that's going to make us feel better.
So you were barefoot and then you get the sneakers on.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because you said, let it go, but then you go. So do you let it go or do you go? So it's actually what's going on. So there's a lot of movement going on there. Yeah. So barefoot is not probably going to get you, it sounds like, to wherever you're planning to get. So you have, so you have a lot of strategies in life. That's quite interesting. Okay. One of the two last final questions to you. Like, if you were to change this image, you with these running shoes and your feet and mud and leaves and sounds and all this image, the whole image that you see in your mind's eyes, if you were to change it in a way that would make it right by you, what would it be?
I think it would look like my shoes never falling apart. And I think that it would always include my dad. Or someone running next to me, because lately it's just been me.
So if I saw this new image the way you see it, what would I see? As you change, you said that the shoes would never fall apart.
Yes, so they would be, I don't mind if they're muddy, but they wouldn't have holes in them.
Okay, the hole. Okay, that's a change. Okay.
The soles wouldn't be worn out.
Okay, soles will not be worn out and the hole is not going to be there. And how would you make it happen? So what would you do?
Oh gosh.
Well, you have magic wand. I mean, that's your metaphor. That's your image. You want to grab? Here's a magic wand. Grab it. That helps. All right.
What would I do to make that happen? I would magically create a shoe that fits my foot perfectly, that would never get tired, and I would find a way for my dad to just be healthy and live forever, so he could always be my running buddy. Yeah.
So that will be a shoe that will never get worn out, and gonna be no like worn out heel, and there will be no hole, and then how would you make it then?
How would I make that happen?
Yeah. How would you make these shoes? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're planning to start like a shoe factory or,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'd have to do my research and get good solid materials and treat them well, take good care of my shoes.
So
Um,
solid.
I take them off rather than just kicking them off.
So solid materials and taken care of. That
Mm-hmm.
sounds like two nice sets of strategies, right?
Does.
Getting solid materials in life and solid knowledge, is it important for you?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
of course.
And taking care is important for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you're good at this.
No, you're good at that. You're taking care of things. Yeah. Well, there is one more question that I was about to ask, but I'm gonna ask, but you don't tell. I'm just gonna send you off kind of with that, is that, with these two good strategies, getting solid material, and taking care of your shoes. You said you don't, it can be muddy, but no holes, but it's gonna be like taking care of your shoes, whether or not it ever got you in trouble, whether or not there was a time or can be a time in your life when your importance of getting solid materials, solid knowledge, do your research, that's what you say, and taking utmost care of things when it maybe was a problem for you a little bit. Uh, Right. I read your chin. You don't need to talk about that now because that's not okay. Well, but it's clearly fueling your motivation, right? That's these are the means. It sounds like the way you're getting motivated, and you keep running. You said marathon. You run in marathon.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very
Right.
communal thing, right? So you're not a sprinter. You don't like sprint, don't you?
Yeah.
No wonder there are holes on you. Marathons are very communal activity, but they're kind of taxing, right?
Yes. Both of
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. So do you see any parallels the way you've transformed this, your original metaphor and the way you've transformed that? Do you see any parallel to the way you feel about, you said you're a little bit low on motivation now, and you're probably trying to maybe get motivated or kind of up it a little bit. Do you see how you can perhaps use the strategies that you use on your sneakers to get motivated in your life right now?
Yes. Yeah. Especially the bit about like taking care. That resonated with me. And I think when I'm feeling a little burnout, it means that I need to pause and take good care of this instrument.
Oh, this instrument. Okay. Solid material. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. Doing research too. You're going to do research of how to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Don't do too much research.
Don't do too much.
Yeah. I mean, just go take care of yourself, right? Or let others. I mean, would you allow others to do research for you? Are you good at that?
I'm getting better at it.
You're getting better. Okay. I got it. It's clear the way I know you. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for helping us to see your motivation. I'm always going to remember your blue running shoes and with the hole and mud and sounds, and it was just very, very spectacular. And I know you're running. I know you're not walking. I see a painting on your wall right above your, whatever, is it right shoulder or left shoulder? I cannot see what it is. It says, walk humbly.
Yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like the wall right behind you, you need to make a painting there and then add another phrase, and it would say like, run, what? Like courageously.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Good. Well, we're in a topic of movement anyway, so you didn't hear that, but I was talking about motivation as a word, and motive came from Old English, and before that Old French, and before that Latin, which means movement, motive. Think about locomotive and all the rest of the motives, right? So then, and here your image of running shoes. I mean, who would know that? But it sounds like your particular strategies to get more motivated are doing research, getting solid knowledge, taking care of others. It's very relational. It's very courageous, and you're moving forward, and you're doing it with others. So thank you so much for helping us with that. Any final words that you might want to share with the listeners?
I think that, I just think that sometimes we do need a little bit of help finding that motivation. And sometimes that means other folks encouraging us along, which I'm sure you probably talked about.
No, I did not. But we know that you need your father right next to you, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now we know. Yeah. So we can be, and it was like, I think just your presence here was very, very motivating. And thank you very much, Alexandra. So then we will get you in the waiting room, and then finish this presentation. Just the last couple of things is that how we do it, like where we get these things in us, and just after listening to Alexandra's story, of course. In an undated paper by Rudolf Dreikurs, titled "How to Get Along with Oneself," he writes about one thing. Here's I am, and there is a society. How can I belong? His society. One thing. Here am I, and there is life, big and wonderful as a snow-capped mountain and a warning tempest. This life is in each of us, and all its majesty and all its power. We are part of it. We fail to realize our strengths and always look at our weakness. We focus attention on what we cannot do and fail to give ourselves credit for what we are and can do. Rather than being proud that we can speak English, we feel inferior because it's difficult to learn Spanish. And the key is, let our inner resources emerge. This research that Alexandra talked about, the seeking the solid materials, finding strengths within selves. Now, how it's all connected to humanity. In What Life Should Mean to You, Adler wrote, we are living on the crust of this poor planet Earth and nowhere else. We must develop under the restrictions and with the possibilities which our place of habitation sets us. In body and mind alike, we must develop so that we can continue our personal lives on Earth and help to ensure the future continuation of mankind. If this is not motivating you, then what does? We are free, and the freedom is probably the most. Can we do it as a part-time? No. Rudolf Dreikurs in Why People Become Artists wrote, a great contribution in any field requires the same quality, namely the ability to give oneself completely, enthusiastically, with full devotion to the contribution. Now, when you can't get motivated by others, it often happens, or with others, because maybe you just run and nobody else is around. Do it for others. Because if this does not motivate you, then what does? This is the end of my presentation. I'm just so missing to see all of you physically, to make eye contact, to answer questions, to give you hugs. I'm going to banking and storing and canning these hugs until I will see all of you in 2021 in Morocco. Come say hi to me when you're there, because I really want to see those of you who I love and the rest of you who I'm ready to fall in love with at ICASSI in year 2021 in Morocco and beyond. Thank you.